Hello again, Year 9, and welcome to Lesson 2.1 of your English Literature Poetry focus on Bayonet Charge by Ted Hughes. You should have everything you need to read and write along with me here, so we'll get started straight away into today's learning question. And that learning question is, what are the themes and big ideas of the poem? So we're looking at the broad strokes today, the ideas that the poem deals with and the themes that the poet wanted to draw out and make us think about. And this is really key to being able to talk about the poem and to be able to compare it with other poems, because these are the big categories that we organize our ideas within. So vocabulary time, and the first one is themes. You'll remember this, I hope, from the remains lessons. Ideas that recur, that is, show up again and again in a piece of literature, poetry, TV, or film. These are the big ideas. And some of the examples in literature we have here: judgment, survival, peace and war, love, heroism, good and evil, circle of life, suffering, deception, coming of age. Bayonet charge, survival, peace and war, heroism. The soldier himself isn't that heroic, but heroism, the theme, can also deal with not being heroic, of the opposite. A theme of love can deal with hate. Peace and war, of course, are two contrasting, two sides of the same coin. Our second vocabulary today is allegory. Now, this refers to a story, poem, or picture, or other art form that carries a moral lesson or reveals a truth about human existence. So a great example of this is A Christmas Carol, Charles Dickens. So Scrooge's journey from this mean and lonely character with much wealth but no love in his life, and he learns to become a man full of joy and friendship and to be generous with his money. And that was an allegory for the inequality of Victorian society as Dickens saw it, and of the need to be generous, to give charitably, to be kind, and to value people over things. Dickens saw that as the only way that the world would ever improve. And he wrote the story to teach that lesson. So Christmas Carol is an allegory, and Scrooge's journey through the story charts the moral development that Dickens is encouraging us to take. Now, Bayonet Charge is allegorical in the way that it explores what warfare and violence does to humanity, to people. And by presenting us with a soldier in this extreme situation, Ted Hughes invites us to investigate what the moral damage, what the damage to our civilization is from this kind of activity. When we first meet the soldier, he's in a state of bewilderment. And if you see the word there, wild, within it, he's made wild by confusion, by fear. He has no idea why he's there. He isn't in control of his own actions, and he considers the cold clockwork of the stars and the nations, this huge machines of countries and generals and war, that's put him here at this moment. And he's had no control over that. He didn't start this war. He's in no position to finish it. He simply has to get through it. And this kind of tells the story about the everyday person who really doesn't control the fate of the world and just has to survive as best they can. He's compared to statuary in mid-stride, and this links to an idea of statues built of heroes. And here Ted Hughes perhaps is being ironic and suggesting that the soldiers we build statues of are as frightened as the yellow hair that appears in front of him. That they're not brave and heroic, but in fact they're wild and panicked and out of control, like the hare with its wide eyes and its open mouth. And that represents as well perhaps nature being twisted and damaged out of place by these human constructs of war and conflict. And the final detail here is the list of high concepts, king and honour and human dignity, that the soldier drops away. And here maybe we see Ted Hughes' final message that when the chips are down, we're all animals, and if it's kill or be killed, then we don't think about who we're doing it for or why we're doing it. It's the simple imperative to survive. So within this poem, within this action scene, we have this deep exploration of what it means to be a human and what it means to be an animal, a thinking animal on this planet and in this time. To nail that down, what I'm going to ask you to do now is to choose one of these quotations, whichever one you like the most and has triggered the strongest image for you, and is to explain how it is allegorical. So I'm going to challenge you not to skip the video back necessarily, see what you can remember about what I've said, but try to give it your own ideas. We know that we're talking about human existence, about war, about the way that war and politics and nation states affect people. And don't give yourself any more than 5 minutes on this. Make it a challenge to write down everything you can. This could be sentences, a mind map, it could be free writing. It doesn't matter, but just tax your brain and really force yourself to try to think it through. So pause the video, give yourself that 5-minute timer and see what you can do. Now, coming back from that, it's a good time to remind ourselves of our old friend the iceberg. When we read that poetry, we're looking for depth, and when the iceberg represents is at the top above the surface of the water, explicit or immediate meaning, what the words are showing us. And then down here we have the implicit or the possible meaning. And this is where allegory sits. This is where we find those interesting ideas. But this is what the words suggest to us, or they symbolize. There are multiple interpretations here. There's lots of possibilities, and it really is up to you. And remember, this is where English becomes exciting, because here there are no real right answers. There are the answers you can explain and back up the most persuasively. And so you can have your own very individual perspective on a poem, and that's every bit as valid as somebody else's. To start thinking about the poem in more depth, we're going to have a look at the themes. And we have 3 themes that we're going to look at here in Bayonet Charge. How war strips away humanity, turning people into animals who kill to survive. That people create ideas of bravery and heroism to justify violence. And the insignificance of a person in the face of history, global events, and the universe. So, these might seem like very specific themes, but in fact they're actually very transferable. And within the Power and Conflict poems, you'll see many examples of these 3 ideas, but within poetry and literature in general, you will come across these time and time again. The idea that patriotism or the love of our country or the love of a man or a woman might justify the things that we do. The idea that despite all of our achievements and our civilization, deep down, humans are violent animals. The idea that in that cold clockwork of nations, when politics and war and generals and politicians are plotting and planning, the average person has very little effect over what's going to happen to their life. So these are big universal themes. And in this table, what I would like you to do is find quotations, lines or words from the poem that link to that theme that you think, yeah, that speaks about this particular idea. Now, a line could fit in more than one of these, and you'll definitely find more than one line for each of these. So I would like you to give yourself 10 minutes, pause the video, give yourself time to do that, get that filled in, keep it for your notes, and come back to complete the lesson with the plenary. And now here we are with the plenary. Comparisons again, looking back at remains, looking at Bayonet Charge and making comparisons, because thinking about both poems together allows us to see new things about each poem and also allows us to practice that putting poems side by side. So thinking about the themes and big ideas we've engaged with today and the themes and big ideas we looked at with remains, what do these poems have in common and what do they have that makes them different? Make your notes, and when you're finished with that, you've completed the lesson and you can move on to the next one as soon as you're ready. Thank you very much.